What if one single waterway could push the entire world closer to a global crisis? Right now, the Iran versus US conflict is creating fear across the Middle East. Oil tankers are under attack, military exercises are increasing, and countries like South Korea, Japan, China, Lebanon, and Israel are suddenly getting pulled into the chaos. And now, the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important shipping routes, is turning into a dangerous war zone. Today, we break down everything happening right now and why the world is getting extremely nervous. The Iran versus US conflict is no longer just about two countries. Now, the entire Middle East is feeling the pressure. Over the past few days, several major incidents have shocked the international community. Cargo ships and oil tankers moving through the Strait of Hormuz are facing attacks, delays, and rising security threats. And this matters because the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important waterways on Earth. Almost 20% of the world's oil passes through this narrow route every single day. If this route becomes fully blocked, oil prices could explode, global trade could slow down, and economies around the world could suffer. That is why governments everywhere are now watching this crisis very closely. One of the biggest developments came from South Korea. According to reports from Yonhap news agency, the South Korean government is preparing a major diplomatic response after one of its cargo vessels was attacked. The ship, called the HMM Namu, experienced an explosion and fire while moving through the Strait of Hormuz on May 4. South Korea has now sent a technical investigation team to Dubai to study the incident and determine exactly who was responsible. But, according to high-ranking officials, many in Seoul already believe Iran was likely behind the attack. This is a very serious accusation. If South Korea officially blames Iran, tensions could rise even more internationally. And remember, South Korea is one of America's closest allies. Even with the danger growing, oil tankers are still trying to move through the Strait of Hormuz. Reuters reported that a Panama flag tanker connected to Japan's largest refining company, ENEOS, successfully crossed the strait carrying massive amounts of crude oil. The ship was transporting 1.2 million barrels of Kuwaiti crude oil, 700,000 barrels of Emirati oil. That is an enormous amount of energy supply. The tanker is expected to reach Japan in early June. But what shocked many analysts is that nobody knows exactly how the ship was allowed to safely pass through such a dangerous area. ENEOS refused to comment publicly. This silence is creating even more mystery and tension. At the same time, another giant Chinese oil tanker carrying 2 million barrels of Iraqi crude finally escaped the Gulf after being trapped there for more than 2 months because of the conflict. Think about that for a moment. Entire ships carrying millions of barrels of oil are being delayed because the region has become so unstable. This shows how deeply this war is already affecting global trade. Meanwhile, Israel is also increasing military operations. The Israeli military announced a large-scale military exercise in the occupied West Bank. According to officials, there will be heavy movement of troops and military vehicles across the territory. The military claimed there is no reason for concern, but many people are still worried. Why? Because tensions in the West Bank are already extremely high. And during these tensions, another tragic incident happened. Reports say Israeli settlers, protected by Israeli soldiers, stole hundreds of sheep near the Palestinian town of Sinjar. When a 16-year-old Palestinian boy named Yusuf Kabneh confronted them, an Israeli soldier reportedly shot and killed him. The death of a teenager has caused anger and sadness across the region. According to reports, at least one Palestinian child has been killed every week on average by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank since January 2025. This continuing violence is adding even more fuel to an already explosive situation in the Middle East. Experts now say Gulf countries are becoming increasingly anxious. Strategic analyst Harlan Ullman explained that the rising tensions and unpredictable diplomacy surrounding Iran are creating political fear, especially in countries like the United Arab Emirates. Arab leaders are now facing an extremely difficult balancing act. On one side, they want security and protection. On the other side, they want to avoid a massive regional war. But as Israeli military operations continue and the Iran versus US conflict becomes more dangerous, staying neutral is becoming harder and harder. Many Gulf nations fear that one wrong move could drag the entire region into chaos. So this situation could pull even more countries into the conflict. In the middle of all this violence, Lebanon and Israel are preparing for new peace negotiations in Washington, D.C. Lebanese Foreign Minister Youssef Raghi stated that Lebanon's main goal is a permanent ceasefire, but Israel reportedly wants Hezbollah to disarm first, and that is where things become complicated. Even though a temporary ceasefire technically exists, violence has continued almost every day. According to Lebanese government data, Israeli strikes have killed more than 400 people since the ceasefire began in April. So while leaders talk about peace publicly, fighting is still happening on the ground. This shows how fragile the situation really is. One small mistake could destroy the negotiations completely. Back in the United States, political leaders are deeply divided over the war. Several lawmakers recently tried to limit President Trump's war powers, but the effort failed again in the Senate. Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer criticized Republicans for blocking the resolution and accused them of allowing the war to continue without proper authorization. Senator Amy Klobuchar praised the few Republicans who voted against continued military escalation. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski warned that the conflict is far from over and pointed to ongoing attacks and tensions in the region. But Republican Senator John Barrasso argued that limiting Trump's powers would weaken America and encourage Iran. This political divide shows that even inside Washington, leaders disagree about how dangerous this conflict could become. Right now, the world is watching several dangerous situations happen at the same time. Attacks on cargo ships, oil tanker disruptions, rising military activity, Israeli-Palestinian tensions, Lebanon-Israel, negotiations, U.S. political divisions, fear across Gulf nations, and all of these events are connected by one thing: the growing instability in the Middle East. Many experts fear that if diplomacy fails, the conflict could expand far beyond Iran and the United States, and if the Strait of Hormuz becomes completely blocked, the economic consequences could affect nearly every country on Earth. Gas prices, food prices, shipping costs, and global markets could all be impacted. That is why this situation matters even to people living thousands of miles away.